I got a good many things mixed up, talked about some medical aspects, which is my game, talked a little bit about Dr. Lukács's game in history, and tried to fulfill some of Dr. Brady's request and talk a little bit about my family's background. I'll be happy to answer questions. Sir?
You mentioned interferon receptors.
Yes.
Are upregulated in the cancer.
Yes.
It's sort of interesting that many environmental pollutants, for instance, aerosol particles, downregulate the production of interferon by the lung cells or body cells.
Yes.
So you have an interplay between the cancer virus and the environmental aspects as well.
Yes. As a matter of fact, these fact that there's interferon resistance because the receptors are released is only one of several factors. We actually describe in some of the publications 4 different aspects of all of that. I didn't have time to mention it, but for example, these viruses in cancer cells can induce the production of prostaglandin E2, which inhibits interferon production. Cancer cells can produce enormous levels of phosphodiesterases, particularly cyclic AMP phosphodiesterases. That destroys cyclic AMP, which is a second messenger to make interferon, so that is another factor. And on top of everything else, my own group isolated a protein, which they are just about trying to characterize and crystallize right now, which apparently is induced by viruses in cancer cells, which has direct interferon inhibitory activity. So even if you just talk about interferon inhibition, there are several mechanisms, including the one you mentioned, whereby that is going on. And in addition, there are many other mechanisms. So viruses and cancer cells are very tricky, and they know how to protect themselves against us. Sir?
I wonder if you would comment on this. My name is Charles DeSel. I've seen on the web, there's some web doctors whose credentials, I don't know if they're valid or not, but apparently there have been some studies that indicate that people who take vaccines to prevent viruses continuously, year after year, like 10 years in a row, that there's a higher level of dementia among those people than among other people that don't do it.
This was much debated, and as far as I know, at the present time, the idea is that these data don't hold up, and that really there is no difficulty at all. Vaccines can have all kinds of problems, including Guillain-Barré syndrome, but this is probably not a valid one. And of course, we always have the problem that we have to decide benefits versus dangers. And it appears that, for example, when we talk about the flu vaccines, the benefit far outweigh the disastrous aspects of it. The Guillain-Barré syndrome is very, very low. In the majority of cases, it's about 1 or 2 cases per million of vaccinations. So it's a problem, but not much we can do. I may mention that when my patients get a flu vaccine, I always tell them, okay, go and get your vaccine, but before that, take 50 milligrams of Benadryl, which is an antihistamine, and take 10 milligrams of prednisone, which is a corticosteroid, and that has a good chance of preventing some, if not all, side effects. Ma'am?
When you mentioned the inavailability of vaccines for rare diseases,
Yes.
How long does a vaccine last if you keep it frozen?
Yes. Now, this is a very good question. One of the problems with vaccines we have that particularly at higher temperatures, they inactivate very rapidly. But the problem is when we send vaccines to tropical countries, by the time they get there, wherever they are supposed to use them, they are inactive. On the other hand, if you freeze them and kept them at proper temperature, they last very, very long. Half-lives are something like 10 years. So to stockpile vaccines by the government would make an awful lot of sense. But again, we have to make sure that we have adequate quantities, and we don't have what has been going on for the past years and going on now, that only selected people can get the vaccine. And a lot of people are left out because there's not enough material. So we have to write contracts. We have to probably have new production facilities, new storage facilities to make sure that there's never a shortage. But right now we have a shortage. Sir?
Dr. Ambrus, is there any relationship between what's going on in the stem cell research and the prevention of H1N1 viruses? Is there anything going on that correlates to this?
No, not yet. Of course, as you well know, stem cell research is really in its infancy. It will probably be a major issue eventually, but right now we have some very major problems, and it will take many years before that will be solved. But as far as we know, stem cell transplantation is completely unrelated to the H1N1 situation, as far as we know.
Well, thank you, academic